Friends, welcome back my YouTube channel. If you want to watch the super hit movie Black Widow in full HD, then first of all, give this video a like. And if you are visiting our channel for the first time, then subscribe to this channel. The name of the movie we are going to discuss in today's video is Black Widow. So we will give you information about how and where you will get to watch Black Widow film officially. Apart from this, we will give you a detailed look at the pre-production, post-production, budget, box office collection, and filming of this movie. A detailed review of the movie will also be given in this video where we will explain the story of this movie in detail. We will also discuss the cast and casting performance of the movie. Apart from this, information about the music department and technical department will also be given. Because of this video is going to be very interesting and entertaining. So you must watch this video till the end. And if you haven't liked this video yet, then like this video now and subscribe to this channel. So let's start the video. Black Widow is a 2021 American superhero film based on Marvel Comics featuring the character of the same name. Produced by Marvel Studios and distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, it is the 24th film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. The film was directed by Cate Shortland from a screenplay by Eric Pearson and stars Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, Black Widow, alongside Florence Pugh, David Harbour, O.T. Fagbenle, Olga Kurylenko, William Hurt, Ray Winston, and Rachel Weisz. Mostly set during the events of Captain America: Civil War, 2016, the film sees Romanoff on the run and forced to confront her past as a Russian spy before she became an Avenger. Lionsgate Films began developing a Black Widow film in April 2004, with David Hayter attached to write and direct. The project did not move forward, and the character's film rights had reverted to Marvel Studios by June 2006. Johansson was cast in the role for several MCU films, beginning with Iron Man 2, 2010, and began discussing a solo film with Marvel. Work began in late 2017, and Shortland was hired in July 2018. Jack Schaefer and Ned Benson contributed to the script before Pearson joined. The film was written to be a prequel that expands on Romanoff's history and helps end her MCU story following the character's death in Avengers: Endgame, 2019. Shortland put an emphasis on the fight sequences and said this was the most violent MCU film so far. Filming took place from May to October 2019 in Norway, England, Budapest, Morocco, and Macon, Georgia. Black Widow premiered at events around the world on June 29, 2021, and was released in the United States on July 9th, simultaneously in theaters and through Disney Plus with Premier Access. It is the first film in Phase 4 of the MCU and was delayed 3 times from an original May 2020 release date due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Black Widow broke several pandemic box office records and grossed over $379 million worldwide. The film received positive reviews from critics, with particular praise for the action sequences and for the performances of Johansson and Pugh. In July 2021, Johansson filed a lawsuit against Disney over the simultaneous release, which was settled 2 months later. Plot: in 1995, super soldier Alexei Shostakov and Black Widow assassin Melina Vostokov work as Russian undercover agents, posing as a family in Ohio with Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova as their daughters. They steal SHIELD intel and escape to Cuba, where their boss, General Drykov, has Romanoff and Belova taken to the Red Room for training as widows. In the following decades, Shostakov is imprisoned in Russia, while Romanoff and Belova become successful, dangerous assassins. Romanoff eventually defects to SHIELD after she and Clint Barton bomb Drykov's Budapest office, which apparently kills Drykov and his young daughter Antonia. In 2016, Natasha Romanoff is a fugitive for violating the Sokovia Accords. She escapes from U.S. Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross and flees to a safe house in Norway supplied by Rick Mason. Meanwhile, Yelena Belova kills a rogue former widow, but comes in contact with a synthetic gas that neutralizes the Red Room's chemical mind control agent. Belova mails the rogue's antidote vials to Romanoff, hoping she and the Avengers can free the other widows, and goes into hiding. When Romanoff unknowingly drives with the vials in her car, Red Room agent Taskmaster attacks her. Romanoff escapes from Taskmaster and realizes that the vials came from Budapest. There she finds Belova, who reveals that Drykov is alive and the Red Room is still active. Widows and Taskmaster attack them, but Romanoff and Belova evade them and meet with Mason, who supplies them with a helicopter. Natasha and Yelena break Alexei out of prison to learn Drykov's location, and he directs them to Melina, who lives on a farm outside St. Petersburg, where she continues research on the chemical mind control process used on the widows. Despite the family reunion, Melina alerts Drykov and his agents arrive to take them, but Natasha convinces Melina to help them, and the pair switch places using face mask technology. Alexei and Yelena are captured and taken to the Red Room, revealed to be a secret aerial facility where Melina frees them from their restraints. Drykov sees through Romanov's disguise and reveals that Taskmaster is Antonia, whose injuries in the Budapest bombing were so severe. Drykov made her a cyborg to save her. This made Antonia a super soldier, capable of mimicking anyone she sees. Natasha is unable to attack Drykov due to a pheromone lock in every widow, but negates that by breaking her own nose and severing her olfactory nerve. Alexei battles Taskmaster while Melina takes out one of the facility's engines, and they then lock Taskmaster in a cell. Drykov escapes as other widows attack Natasha, but Yelena exposes them to the antidote. Natasha copies the locations of other widows worldwide from Draykov's computer as the facility begins to explode and fall. She retrieves 2 surviving antidote vials and frees Taskmaster from the locked cell. Melina and Alexei escape via plane, while Yelena blows up Drykov's aircraft, killing him. In freefall, Natasha gives Yelena a parachute before battling Taskmaster. After landing, Natasha uses 1 antidote vial on Antonia, Cate, and Taskmaster, and gives the other to Yelena, along with the locations of the other affected widows so she can find and free them. Natasha says her goodbyes and she leaves with Antonia and the freed widows. 2 weeks later, Mason supplies Natasha with a Quinjet to use in freeing the imprisoned Avengers. In a post-credits scene set after Natasha's death in 2019, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine visits Yelena at Natasha's grave. De Fontaine blames Natasha's death on Barton and assigns him as Yelena's next target. Casts Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff, Hanshash, Black Widow. An Avenger, highly trained former KGB assassin and former agent of SHIELD Romanoff, is on the run and alone following the events of Captain America, Civil War, 2016, which Johansson saw as an opportunity to show the character as a woman who has come into her own and is making independent and active choices for herself. Director Cate Shortland said, Romanoff's ambiguous psychological journey was the center of the story. And writer Eric Pearson said the film would show Romanoff become the more emotional, vulnerable, and at peace version of the character seen in Avengers, Infinity War 2018, and Avengers Endgame 2019. Because the character dies in Endgame, Johansson said, Black Widow allowed her to leave the MCU on a high note and said her work portraying Romanoff was now complete. Ever Anderson portrays a young Natasha Romanoff. Anderson, who speaks Russian, felt her background in taekwondo and gymnastics training was helpful for the role. Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, a sister to Romanoff who was trained in the Red Room as a Black Widow. Johansson said Belova was an early inclusion in the film who could stand on her own alongside Romanoff. Pugh said there was a generational difference between the two, describing Belova as unapologetic and confident in herself and curious and emotionally brave. She admired Belova's bluntness and determination and noted that the character is a skilled fighter who does not know how to live a normal life. Shortland said Romanoff would be handing the baton to Belova in the film, and during filming, Pugh looked to Johansson for guidance on meeting the demands of making Marvel films. Johansson wanted to avoid an antagonistic dynamic between the two characters, instead having a sister-like but contentious relationship that Pugh characterized as a sister story that really hones in on grief, on pain, on abuse, on being a victim and living with being a victim. Violet McGraw portrays a young Yelena Belova. David Harbour as Alexei Shostakov, the Russian super soldier counterpart to Captain America and father figure to Romanoff and Belova. Harbour said Shostakov was not heroic or noble and was both comically and tragically flawed. Shostakov claims that he fought Captain America in the 1980s, and Pearson felt the character actually believes this despite it being impossible in the MCU timeline. Harbour and Shortland discussed Ricky Gervais' performance in The Office, 2001-2003, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's in The Savages, 2007, described as comedy that comes out of real domestic need. Harbour had already grown his facial hair for the 4th season of Stranger Things, 2016 present, and he gained weight for the role to be 280 pounds, 127 kilos. He then lost 60 pounds, 27 kilos over the course of filming to portray a younger version of the character in the opening flashback sequence. O.T. Fag Benley as Rick Mason, an ally from Romanoff's Shield past who has a romantic history with her. Fag Benley described Mason as a finder for people who aren't so affiliated with armies, who assists Romanoff in that manner. On why a romance between Mason and Romanoff is not directly explored in the film, Fag Benley said the film was bigger than that, and their relationship was part of Romanoff's larger family instead. Beyond Pearson's script, Fag Benley developed Mason's backstory with Shortland and Johansson. As Taskmaster's identity was kept secret, many people assumed Mason would secretly take up the mantle, which Fag Benley had to deny even to his personal trainer. The film's final scene, in which Mason provides Romanoff with a Quinjet, was added during reshoots in early 2020 after test audiences liked seeing Romanoff and Mason together. Olga Kurylenko as Antonia Dreykov, Taskmaster, Dreykov's daughter who completes missions for the Red Room. She has photographic reflexes that allow her to mimic opponents' fighting styles and uses techniques from superheroes such as Black Widow, Iron Man, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Hawkeye. Several body doubles were required to portray the character's various skills. Kurylenko said much of Antonia's pain is internal, and described her relationship with Dreykov as abusive, since Dreykov uses her as a tool and has her do whatever he wants. Taskmaster is revealed to be Antonia in the film, instead of the comic book counterpart Tony Masters, since Masters did not fit into the film's story, and it was more natural to Pearson to tie Taskmaster into a loose end from Natasha's past. Ryan Kira Armstrong portrays a young Antonia Dreykov. William Hurt as Thaddeus Ross, the United States Secretary of State and a former U.S. Army general. Regarding Ross's mindset in Black Widow following the character's attempt to control the Avengers in Civil War, Hurt said there was fatigue setting in, and Ross was a soldier on the last hill. The way he can strike back against the changing world would be by capturing Natasha Romanoff, Ray Winstone as Dreykov, a Russian general and the head of the Red Room. Pearson felt the film needed a villain that could fit within its time frame, undetected to avoid contradicting the events of Infinity War. He described Dreykov as a coward who is puppeteering things from the shadows and does not care about hurting others. Rachel Weisz as Melina Vostokov, a seasoned spy trained in the Red Room as a Black Widow and mother figure to Romanoff and Belova, who is now one of the Red Room's lead scientists compared to Vostokov's comic book counterpart, who becomes the supervillain Iron Maiden. Weisz felt the film's version was more ambiguous and layered, with a deadpan personality and no sense of humor, which Weisz found amusing. Weisz was given a tailored Black Widow suit for the film, which he called an iconic piece of clothing that was a lot to live up to. Weisz decided to portray Vostokov as more affectionate towards Shostakov rather than dismissive. Additionally, Leonie Samuel, Michelle Lee, and Nana Blondell appear as Red Room assassins Lorato, Oksana, and Ingrid, respectively, while Jade Shu portrays another Black Widow who was later identified as Helen in Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, 2021. Olivier Richters portrays Ursa Major, a fellow inmate of Shostakov's. The film's post-credits scene sees Julia Louis-Dreyfus reprising her role as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine from the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier 2021 in an uncredited cameo appearance. Jeremy Renner reprises his MCU role as Clint Barton in an uncredited voice-only cameo. Production. Background. In February 2004, Lionsgate acquired the film rights for the Marvel Comics character Black Widow, and in April announced David Hayter as writer and director of the film, with Marvel Studios' Avi Arad producing. By June 2006, Lionsgate had dropped the project and the rights reverted to Marvel Studios. Hayter and Marvel tried getting another financier to develop the project, but Hayter did not feel that they found another place that was willing to take the movie and the character seriously. Hayter said this left him heartbroken and he hoped the film would be made someday. Marvel Studios entered early talks with Emily Blunt to play Black Widow in the Marvel Cinematic Universe MCU film Iron Man 2, 2010, in January 2009, but she was unable to take the role due to a previous commitment to star in Gulliver's Travels, 2010. In March 2009, Scarlett Johansson signed on to play Natasha Romanoff-Scott's Black Widow, with her deal including options for multiple films. In September 2010, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige said discussions with Johansson had already taken place regarding a Black Widow standalone film, but Marvel's focus was on the crossover film The Avengers, 2012. Johansson reprised her role in that film as well as in Captain America, The Winter Soldier, 2014, Avengers, Age of Ultron, 2015, Captain America, Civil War, 2016, Avengers Infinity War, 2018, and Avengers Endgame, 2019. After the release of Age of Ultron, Johansson revealed that the number of films on her contract had been adjusted since she first signed to match the demand of the character, as Marvel had not anticipated the audience's positive response to the character and Johansson's performance. After teasing Black Widow's past in Age of Ultron, Feige said in February 2014 that he would like to see it explored further in a solo film. Development work for this had already started, including a pretty in-depth treatment by Nicole Perlman, who co-wrote Marvel Studios' Guardians of the Galaxy 2014. The following April, Johansson expressed interest in starring in a Black Widow film and said it would be driven by demand from the audience. That July, Hayter expressed interest in reviving the project for Marvel, while director Neil Marshall said a month later that he would love to do a Black Widow film. Marshall said he was fascinated by a superhero with extraordinary skills, rather than superpowers who is also an ex-KGB assassin. In April 2015, Johansson spoke more on the possibility of a solo Black Widow film, seeing the potential to explore the character's different layers as depicted in her previous appearances. However, she felt that the character was being used well in this part of the universe at that time. While promoting Civil War the next April, Feige noted that due to Marvel's announced schedule of films for Phase 3 of the MCU, any potential Black Widow film would be 4 or 5 years away. He added that Marvel was creatively and emotionally committed to making a Black Widow film eventually. Joss Whedon, the director of The Avengers and Avengers, Age of Ultron, said in July 2016 that he was open to directing a Black Widow film. He liked the idea of making it a paranoid spy thriller that was John le Carré on crack. In October, Johansson discussed the potential film being a prequel, saying, "You can bring it back to Russia. You could explore the Widow program. There's all kinds of stuff that you could do with it." She cautioned that she may not want to wear a skin-tight cat suit for much long. The next February, Johansson said she would dedicate herself to making any potential Black Widow film amazing. "It would have to be the best version that movie could possibly be. Otherwise, I would never do it would have to be its own standalone film and its own style and its own story." Due to the development work already done and the public support for the project, Marvel Studios decided to move forward with the film at the beginning of the MCU's Phase 4 in 2020, following the conclusion of the Infinity Saga storyline in Endgame. Johansson said this decision had become more of a reality during the filming of Infinity War. Following Romanoff's death in Endgame, Johansson felt there was no pressing urgency to make a Black Widow film, and this would improve the project's quality. Development. Feige met with Johansson to discuss the direction of a Black Widow film in October 2017. Marvel then began meeting with writers for the project, including Jack Schaefer and Jessica Gao. Gao's pitch was influenced by Grosse Point Blank, 1997, in which Romanoff would have been planted in a high school to assassinate a target and then 20 years later attends a high school reunion where she has to deal with the fallout of her earlier actions. The pitch heavily featured the character She-Hulk, and Marvel Studios executive Brad Winderbaum felt Gao was instead pitching a She-Hulk film that featured Black Widow. Gao would later be hired by Marvel Studios as the head writer for the Disney Plus television series She-Hulk. Attorney at Law, 2022. Schaefer met with Feige in December and was hired to write the screenplay by the end of 2017. Schaefer and Johansson were set to discuss the direction of the film at the beginning of February 2018. Marvel began meeting with female directors to potentially take on the project, part of a priority push by major film studios to hire female directors for franchises. By the end of April 2018, the studio had met with over 65 directors for the project in an extremely thorough search, including Denise Gamza-Ergovan, Chloe Zhao, who went on to direct Marvel's Eternals, 2021, Ama Asante, and Lynn Shelton. Lucretia Martel was also approached, but was discouraged when she was told that she would not have to worry about the action scenes. She also felt the music and visual effects of Marvel films were horrible. Corley Farjate was in contention following the success of her film Revenge 2017, but chose to develop The Substance 2024 instead, believing Marvel would not give her final cut privilege. In the following months, a shortlist of 49 directors was made before the top choices of Cate Shortland, Asante, and Maggie Betts met with Feige and Johansson. In June, Melanie Laurent and Kimberly Pierce were also in the next-to-final mix. Johansson was a fan of Shortland's previous female-starring film Lore 2012, and was the one who had approached her about directing the film. Shortland was hired in July and watched all of Romanoff's MCU appearances in preparation for making the film. The Hollywood Reporter reported in October 2018 that Johansson would earn $15 million for the film, an increase from the low seven-figure salary that she earned for starring in The Avengers. Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth each earned $15 million for the third films in their MCU franchises, Civil War and Thor Ragnarok 2017, respectively, as well as for Infinity War and Endgame. Despite The Hollywood Reporter claiming that their report had been confirmed by multiple knowledgeable sources, Marvel Studios disputed its accuracy and said they never publicly disclosed salaries or deal terms. The Walt Disney Company later said Johansson had earned $20 million by the end of July 2021 for her work on the film, including her role as an executive producer. As Romanoff dies during the events of Endgame, the film is set earlier in the MCU timeline. It primarily takes place between the main plot of Civil War and that film's final scene, in which the Avengers escape from prison. Johansson and Feige felt this was the best place to start, because it is the first time that Romanoff is on her own, and not tied to a larger organization such as the Red Room, SHIELD, or the Avengers. This setting means the film is not an origin story for Romanoff, which Feige wanted to avoid because he felt that was the expected direction for a prequel to go. He was influenced by the television series Better Call Saul, 2015-2022, which is a prequel to the series Breaking Bad, 2008-2013, calling it a wonderful example of a prequel that almost completely stands on its own, because it informs you about so many things you didn't know about before. Pre-production. In February 2019, Ned Benson was hired to rewrite the script, and Feige confirmed that, despite rumors, the studio did not want the film to receive an R rating from the Motion Picture Association the following month. Florence Pugh entered negotiations to join the cast as a spy later revealed to be Yelena Belova. Marvel had been considering Pugh for the role since late 2018, but began looking at other actresses in early 2019, including Saoirse Ronan, who passed on the role. The studio returned to Pugh after she received strong reviews for her performance in the film Fighting with My Family, 2019. Devin Grayson and J.G. Jones, who co-created Belova, expected to receive $25,000 for her role in the film, based on a 2007 agreement with Marvel Comics, but ultimately received $5,000 due to a provision in the contract, which allowed Marvel to reduce creators' payments. After Grayson went public with this, Marvel agreed to pay her the remaining amount. In April 2019, Pugh was confirmed to have been cast alongside David Harbour, Rachel Weisz, and O.T. Fagbenel. An early version of the script included a scene from Civil War featuring Romanoff and Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark, it's Iron Man. And Downey was reported to be appearing in the film. Fans also expected Jeremy Renner to reprise his MCU role as Clint Barton Shortland, and Feige ultimately decided against including other heroes, so Romanoff could stand on her own, though Renner does have an uncredited voice-only cameo. Eric Pearson, who started his writing career in Marvel's screenwriting program and went on to work on several MCU projects, was hired during pre-production to rewrite the film's script again. He ultimately received sole screenwriter credit. With Schaefer and Benson receiving story credits, Shortland and Johansson had decided to take inspiration from the television series The Americans, 2013-2018, which is about a Russian undercover spy family, by introducing Romanoff's own family of Russian spies, including Belova. When Pearson joined the film, the opening sequence, a prologue set in the 1990s with Romanoff and her family living undercover in the Midwestern United States, had already been written. The rest of the film focuses on this family coming back together in the present day, with a pivotal scene later in the film where they are all reunited around a dining table. Of all the MCU projects that he had worked on, Pearson found Black Widow's setting within the MCU timeline to be the most difficult to get right. This was because he wanted the audience to feel that the villain could succeed without breaking the timeline, which would be difficult considering audiences had already seen Civil War, Infinity War, and Endgame. He chose to focus on the Red Room, where the Black Widows are trained, and its leader, who wields power from the shadows. Pearson thought that the film's spy thriller tone helped alleviate his concerns about the villain. A scene at the end of the film in which Thaddeus Ross pursues Romanoff was deliberately left unresolved, as Shortland wanted to leave the audience on a high and questioning how Romanoff escapes rather than exhausted with another fight. This is then followed by a scene that connects this film to the end of Civil War, by showing Romanoff leaving on a Quinjet to save the Avengers. She is wearing a vest given to her by Belova and has dyed her hair blonde, which matches the character's appearance in Infinity War. Pearson said there were discussions about ensuring the film was an appropriate farewell for Romanoff. They wanted it to feature the greatest hits of the character, including expanding on the backstory that was mentioned in The Avengers. In that film, Romanoff and Barton discuss a past mission in Budapest, and there is a mention of Dreykov's daughter. Black Widow expands on the Budapest hints by having Romanoff return there and revealing some of that mission's details. Dreykov is revealed to be the head of the Red Room, who Romanoff believes to have been killed during the earlier Budapest mission. Johansson wanted the film to comment on the Nas Me Too movement, which saw women supporting each other and coming through these shared experiences of trauma on the other side. And this is seen in the way that Romanoff is forced, by the arrival of Belova, to confront Dreykov and her past trauma. Johansson was grateful to have the film to comment on these ideas. Pearson felt the truth behind Dreykov's daughter needed to be something pretty bad. Natasha is ashamed of it. We've been doing allusions to her having a dark past throughout the MCU. It had to be something actively tough that she did that haunts her dreams. He settled on the idea that Romanoff and Barton used Dreykov's young daughter as bait to kill him, and believed the girl had also died in the process. There was heated conversation with Marvel over how much of Romanoff's dark past to show, and Pearson successfully argued for including this element. Early versions of the script included the comic book character, Tony Masters, Taskmaster as a villain. Pearson moved towards the more subtle villain Dreykov, who he felt fit better into the story and the timeline, but decided to reveal that Dreykov's daughter is alive, and now a version of Taskmaster that he compared to a Terminator. He felt this was a way to have some Marvel fun within the otherwise grounded story. Fag Benlay auditioned for the original version of Taskmaster, who he called a maniac with an African accent, and said the role was down to him and another actor. After the story changes, Marvel asked if Fag Benley was interested in playing Rick Mason instead, which he accepted. Filming. Principal photography began on May 28, 2019. In Norway, Shortland took inspiration from such films as How to Train Your Dragon, 2010, No Country for Old Men, 2007, and Thelma and Louise, 1991, as well as Captain America, The Winter Soldier. She looked at combat films and those with armies and militia, allowing her to imagine females in those roles to help translate that to Black Widow. Shortland also referenced fight scenes involving female characters in Alien, 1979, and the Terminator franchise, and wanted the film's fights to resemble real fights rather than wrestling matches. She edited together fight scenes from different films into shorts that helped her explore the style of fighting that she wanted in the film. Shortland said this was the most violent film in the MCU, and she wanted to approach that aspect with the same truth that she was approaching the rest of the film. Early reports suggested that Rob Hardy would be the film's cinematographer, but he left the production before filming began. Gabriel Beristain served as cinematographer instead, having previously done so for the Marvel one-shot short films Item 47, 2012, and Agent Carter, 2013, for the television series Agent Carter, 2015-2016, and for additional photography on Iron Man, 2008, and 6 other MCU films. Beristain was initially not credited in Black Widow's trailers, as pointed out by Jeff Snyder at Collider, who wondered if contractual obstacles were to blame for Marvel not crediting the cinematographer at that point. Snyder felt Beristain would be credited in later marketing materials, and his hiring was confirmed in the film's official press advance. Beristain later confirmed that he joined the film after production had already begun, opting to leave a television directing job and move to London so he could be the main cinematographer for an MCU film. Shortland preferred to avoid technical equipment where possible and prioritize natural lighting, which provided a challenge for Berenstain in having to match the light of the location shoots to later additional photography filmed in Los Angeles. The naturalistic approach was also reflected in interior scenes, lighting from outside the set or using lights with strong diffusion to create the same effect. An anamorphic format was chosen to highlight the expansive movements and landscapes in the film, with a special system used that split the camera's image sensor from its body to help with this approach. The production moved to Pinewood Studios in London in early June. Shortland hired someone to help Johansson and Pugh bond through trust exercises and other bonding activities, but the pair felt their real bonding happened during Pugh's first 2 days of filming when they were working on an early fight scene between Romanoff and Belova. Pugh had some stunt experience from her work on Fighting with My Family, and Johansson gave her advice that she had received from Samuel L. Jackson while working on Iron Man 2. Pearson was on set to hear a joke from Pugh about the ridiculous pose that Johansson often lands in while fighting as Romanoff throughout her MCU appearances, which led to him adding some jokes from Belova to Romanoff about the poses in the script. Ray Winstone joined the film's cast later in June, when filming took place on location in Budapest. 13 BMW X3s were used to create a car chase involving Romanoff and Belova in Budapest, with the crew often switching off the electronic stability control and safety assistance functions to be able to do what the script asked for. They also swapped the X3's electronic parking brake for a hydraulically actuated one. Second Unit Director Darren Prescott explained that the crew would often replace the engine or tear the entire body off the car and rebuild it from scratch. The sequence's plot and locations were adjusted to help Prescott create the spontaneous stunts that he wanted. Hooting took place in mid-July 2019 at Hankley Common in Surrey, England, under the working title Blue Bayou. The site was made to look like a Russian farmstead with added helicopter crash sites. The Thursley Parish Council objected to this filming as it had occurred while Marvel Studios' application to use the site was still pending. The production planned to revisit the site in late August for further filming. Black Widow was officially announced at the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con later in July with a release date of May 1st, 2020, revealed alongside roles for some of the new cast members. In August, bodybuilder Olivier Richters revealed that he had been cast in the film, playing a character that was subsequently confirmed to be Ursa Major. That same month, crew undertook scanning and texture photography at the well-safe Guardian oil rig in the North Sea as a reference for visual effects. A wrap party was held at the end of September before production moved to Macon, Georgia for the week of September 30th. Filming locations in Macon, including Terminal Station, were dressed to portray Albany, New York. Set photos from the start of October revealed that William Hurt would appear in the film, reprising his MCU role as Thaddeus Ross. Additional filming in Georgia took place in Atlanta and Rome. Also in early October, filming took place in Tangier, Morocco, with local production services provided by Zack Productions. Principal photography lasted for 87 days and officially wrapped on October 6, 2019. Post-production Matthew Schmidt and Lee Folsom Boyd served as editors on the film. Pearson said the film's handling of Romanoff's Budapest backstory had been 85% cracked prior to the start of filming, and the rest was determined during the editing process as well as additional photography. Winston disliked returning for the additional photography, feeling his performance was being criticized by Marvel Studios executives. He wanted his role to be recast instead, but was contractually obligated to return. A scene of Romanoff wearing underwear and a t-shirt that Shortland enjoyed due to how sexy Johansson is when she's in control was cut from the film because test audiences criticized the scene as using the male gaze. Black Widow is one of the few Marvel films to feature an opening credits sequence, which Feige explained was because Shortland felt strongly about exploring what Dreykov is responsible for at the beginning of the film. The sequence was designed by Perception, who worked with Shortland to film various vignettes on set that were made to look as if they were captured on 8mm film, 90s digital video, and VHS. These were combined with old photographs and documents that Perception's team created and manipulated to tell the story. In mid-March 2020, Disney removed the film from its release schedule due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In early April, Disney announced that Black Widow would be released on November 6, 2020, and the rest of their Phase 4 slate of films were shifted to accommodate this. In September 2020, Disney pushed the release back again to May 7th, 2021, followed by a third shift in March 2021 to July 9th, 2021. In April 2021, following Julia Louis-Dreyfus's appearance as Valentina Allegra de Fontaine in the Marvel Studios television series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021, Joanna Robinson of Vanity Fair reported that Louis-Dreyfus had been expected to first appear in Black Widow before the delays pushed its release to after The Falcon and the Winter Soldier's premiere on Disney+. Feige later confirmed this, explaining that Black Widow's post-credits scene was originally intended to be the character's introduction, but instead became a reference to her appearance in the series. He said this was the only change to Marvel's Phase 4 plans that was forced by the pandemic. The post-credits scene was added after Hawkeye 2021 showrunner Jonathan Igla expressed interest in having Yelena Belova appear in his series. Pearson was asked to write the scene in which De Fontaine assigns Clint Barton as Belova's next target, without knowing who the target would be. Shortland considered the setting of the scene at Romanoff's grave in a remote clearing to be a response to fans who were upset that Romanoff did not receive a funeral in Endgame. Shortland said the character was private and would not have wanted a large funeral, so this scene allowed the character's ending to be the grief the individuals felt, rather than a big public outpouring. Shortland said in May 2021 that the film had been completed a year prior and had not been altered, despite the release delays. Olga Kurilenko's role as Antonia Dreykov, Asti, Taskmaster, was revealed with the film's release. The film's visual effects vendors included Cinesite, Digital Domain, Industrial Light and Magic, Mammal Studios, SSVFX, Scanline VFX, Trickster, and Weta FX. Digital Domain was responsible for the final battle sequence and completed around 320 visual effects shots for the film. They created the Red Room, an airborne fortress hidden in the clouds, which was inspired by the brutalist architecture of the Soviet Union. A combination of practical and visual effects were used to create the sequence where the Red Room is destroyed and falls from the sky. Actors and stunt performers were filmed in a wind tunnel against blue screens while being held with wires and mechanical arms, and the surrounding environment of sky and debris was created digitally. Cinesite primarily handled the Russian prison that Harbour's Alexei Shostakov Red Guardian is found in. FX created the mountain range that surrounds the prison, based on photography from Svalbard, Norway, as well as an avalanche. Weta also created the Mi-8 helicopter that is seen in that sequence, while Cinesite created it for other sequences. For the pigs on the farm of Weiss's Melina Vostokov, filmed live Kuna Kune pigs as a reference for the digital pigs in the final shots, Industrial Light and Magic completed approximately 800 VFX shots for the film, working on the opening airplane escape scene, the Budapest apartment fight and subsequent motorcycle and car chase, and the fight between Romanoff and a group of Black Widows in Dreykov's office. The opening airplane scene was created with half of an airplane rig on a hydraulic platform. Footage filmed on location in Atlanta was played on LED screens on the soundstage to create interactive lighting for the actors on set. To create the Budapest scenes, ILM worked with second unit director Darren Prescott. Romanoff and Belova's chase across the rooftops was a combination of practical and visual effects, while scenes involving smokestacks were created using virtual actors. The car chase scene in Budapest features a practical tank driven by Taskmaster that was created by Paul Corbould, the film's special effects supervisor. Digital cars were added to the scene to make it appear more dangerous and for better interaction with the tank. For the fight scene in Dreykov's office, ILM worked on the graphic displays in the background as well as the lighting that interacts with the widows' bodies. In addition to creating the film's opening credits sequence, Perception designed the graphics for Dreykov's screens and other Red Room technology, researching Soviet Union technology for inspiration. Trickster created Taskmaster's mask and worked on several action sequences as well. Music. Main article, Black Widow. Alexander Desplat was revealed to be composing the music for the film in January 2020. Late in post-production, Lorne Balfe replaced Desplat as composer, which Desplat confirmed in May 2020. Balfe briefly references Alan Silvestri's motif for Romanoff and main theme for the Avengers from the Avengers in the score, but otherwise wanted to focus on creating a new identity for Romanoff. His discussions with Shortland led to him writing an original piece in the style of Russian folk music that he thought Romanoff and Belova may have grown up listening to. The rest of his score developed from that piece and also took inspiration from Russian composers Sergei Prokofiev and Igor Stravinsky. Balfe completed recording for the score at Abbey Road Studios as the COVID-19 pandemic began to impact studio recording sessions. The film's opening credits sequence features a cover of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit by Think Up Anger, featuring Malia J, which was suggested by Perception. American Pie by Don McLean and Cheap Thrills by Sia are also featured in the film. A soundtrack album featuring Balfe's score was released digitally by Marvel Music and Hollywood Records on July 9, 2021. Marketing. The film was officially announced at the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con by Feige, Shortland, and members of the cast. They discussed the film and introduced footage from the first 30 days of production. Some of that footage was included in a teaser trailer for the film that was released in December, with several commentators highlighting its spy thriller tone and calling the film long-awaited or highly anticipated by fans. Rachel Leishman of the Mary Sue said finally seeing a trailer for the film was surprisingly emotional. She felt that setting it between Civil War and Infinity War would allow the character to grow into her more mature form from the latter film, after earlier MCU films had depicted her in a supporting role to the male Avengers Scott Mendelson of Forbes, compared the trailer's story and tone to the film's Atomic Blonde 2017, Red Sparrow 2018, and Anna 2019, but felt Black Widow had a commercial advantage over those films since it stars a familiar character. Mendelson thought this familiarity could outweigh the teaser's focus on family melodrama over superheroics, which he compared to Marvel Studios' Thor 2011. The Hollywood Reporter's Richard Newby found noticeable differences in Shortland's shot composition and cinematography in the trailer, compared to the styles of Jon Favreau, Joss Whedon, and the Russo brothers, all directors who helped define Black Widow in previous MCU films, indicating a move away from the MCU's house style. What was intended to be the final trailer for the film debuted in March 2020. Nicole Carpenter of Polygon said it was the most in-depth look at the film yet, with a more intimate look at the relationship between Romanoff and Belova. Josh Weiss of Sci-Fi Wire enjoyed the trailer's quieter moments in addition to the expected action sequences. Mendelson found the trailer to be an improvement over the teaser, attributing this to its theme of found families, the Avengers, forced families, the Black Widows, and actual family portrayed by Pugh, Harbour, and Weiss. Disney's president of marketing, Asad Ayaz, said that after Black Widow was delayed from its original May 2020 release date, the marketing team paused their campaign for the film. Once they began working towards a new release date in 2021, they were able to use character looks and story points they had not revealed in the initial campaign to build a new approach to the film. Ayaz explained that they did not want it to feel like they had returned to the same marketing campaign, which focused on the Black Widow symbol and her traditional black costume. The marketing team differentiated the new campaign by instead featuring the character's new white costume from the film, and by focusing on her legacy as an Avenger. The campaign featured 30 brands, including co-branded opportunities with Gico, Ziploc, BMW, and Synchrony Bank. Additional custom partnerships occurred with Fandango, YouTube, Roku, TikTok, and Amazon, with a Twitter E3 gaming sponsorship, as well as announcements, posters, and collectibles for premium theater experiences such as IMAX. In September 2020, Barbie released 2 Black Widow dolls featuring Romanoff's black and white outfits from the film. Marvel released another trailer in April 2021, which Austin Goslin at Polygon described as a new final trailer for the film's new release date. He said it only had a few new scenes in it, but provided the best look yet at the villain Taskmaster. Goslin highlighted the Russian-inspired version of the Avengers theme music used at the end of the trailer. Germain Lucier of IO9 also highlighted the use of the Avengers theme, feeling that the music combined with footage from previous MCU films, as well as flashback moments of Romanoff and her family, made the trailer feel more epic than the previous final trailer. Lucier said it was a trailer that gets you excited for the return of MCU films after the pandemic delays. Ethan Anderton of Hachanchet Film said the free-falling fight with Taskmaster showcased in the trailer looks like a sequence unlike any other in the MCU. The trailer received over 70 million views in its first 24 hours. On July 5th, Moneymaker, Behind the Black Widow, a half-hour documentary special centered on Johansson's stunt double Heidi Moneymaker, premiered on ESPN Plus as part of ESPN's E60 series. The special was directed by Martin Kotebakshian and narrated by Johansson. A subsequent 8-minute version of the special aired on ESPN's Outside the Lines on July 10th. An episode of the series Marvel Studios' Legends was released on July 7th, exploring Black Widow using footage from her previous MCU appearance. Release: theatrical and premiere access. Further information: impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Walt Disney Company. Black Widow premiered on June 29, 2021 at various red carpet fan events in London, Los Angeles, Melbourne, and New York City. It was screened at the Taormina Film Fest on July 3rd and was released in the United States on July 9th, simultaneously in theaters and on Disney Plus with premiere access for $30. It premiered in 46 territories over the course of its first weekend. In the US, it opened in 4,100 theaters, with 375 in IMAX, over 800 in premium large formats, 2,500 in 3D, and 275 in specialty D-Box, 4DX, and ScreenX theaters. In IMAX screenings, approximately 22 minutes of the film appeared in IMAX's expanded aspect ratio. Black Widow is the first film released in Phase 4 of the MCU. Release dates for China, Taiwan, India, parts of Australia, and other Southeast Asia and Latin America markets were not set by the film's opening weekend, and by September, the film was not expected to be released theatrically in China. Black Widow was the first of several MCU films to not receive a theatrical release in China, a de facto ban that was not lifted until 2023. The film was originally scheduled for release on May 1st, 2020. In early March 2020, after the COVID-19 pandemic had caused the closure of theaters in many countries, the release date for the film No Time to Die was shifted from April 2020 to November 2020. Commentators began speculating about the potential for other major films like Black Widow to be postponed as well. Deadline Hollywood reported on rumors in the film distribution industry, suggesting that Black Widow would take the November release date of Marvel's Eternals, with the latter being delayed until 2021, but Disney said that it still intended to release Black Widow in May 2020. After a trailer was released for the film a week later, Scott Mendelson at Forbes said the trailer's existence and use of the May 2020 release date confirmed that the film was not being delayed. He said this was the logical choice because it was an ideal release date for the film and there was no evidence that the pandemic would affect its performance in the US. A week later, theaters across the US were closed due to the pandemic, and gatherings larger than 50 people were discouraged by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Disney removed the film from its May release date. Adam B. Vary and Matt Donnelly at Variety questioned whether the MCU could be impacted more by pandemic delays than other franchises due to its interconnected nature. A Marvel Studios source told them that changing the film's release date would not affect the MCU timeline, and the pair speculated that this was due to the film being a prequel in April. Disney gave Eternals' November 6, 2020 release date to Black Widow, and shifted all other Phase 4 films back in the release schedule to accommodate this. Anthony D'Alessandro of Deadline Hollywood reported in September 2020 that Disney was considering rescheduling Black Widow again, with Variety also reporting this and attributing it to the low box office returns for Disney's Mulan in China and Warner Bros. Tenet in North America. Later that month, Disney pushed the release to May 7, 2021, rescheduling Eternals and Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, 2021 as a result. In January 2021, Feige said he still expected Black Widow to debut in theaters, but Variety reported that Disney was considering releasing the film on its streaming service Disney+. There was also potential to delay the film's release again, or release it concurrently in theaters and on Disney+ with premiere access, as was done with Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon, 2021, if the effects of the pandemic did not improve leading up to May 2021. Variety felt it would be insurmountably more challenging for Black Widow to become profitable if it did not have a traditional theatrical release. In early February, Disney CEO Bob Chapek reaffirmed that Black Widow was intended to be solely released in theaters, but Disney was cognizant of theaters reopening, particularly in large cities such as New York and Los Angeles, as well as consumer desire to return to theaters. According to Variety, Feige was opposed to a hybrid release for the film, If the film was delayed again, the film distribution industry believed Disney would move it to July 9th, 2021, which at that point was the release date for Shang-Chi. Chapek reiterated the next month that Disney planned to release Black Widow in theaters on May 7th, while Deadline Hollywood again noted the possibilities of delaying the film, releasing it simultaneously on Disney+, or releasing it in theaters for a short time before making it available on Disney+. Chapek soon stated that Disney was remaining flexible as they gauged consumer behavior, and they would make a final decision at the last minute. In late March, Disney moved the film's release date to July 9th, 2021, and announced that it would be released simultaneously in theaters and on Disney Plus with Premier Access. Shang-Chi was delayed again as a result. Kareem Daniel, the chairman of Disney Media and Entertainment Distribution, said the simultaneous release gave fans options to see the film while serving the evolving preferences of audiences. Chaim Gartenberg at The Verge opined that Disney had to move forward with a simultaneous release because they could not afford to delay Marvel's Phase 4 television series, which were some of the few high-profile must-watch shows on Disney+, and once they began with WandaVision in January 2021, there was only so long that the films could be delayed before the interconnected nature of Marvel's storytelling began causing issues. For instance, the series Hawkeye was expected to be released later in 2021 and contained spoilers for Black Widow, so the film needed to be released before then. Gartenberg said Disney and Marvel were victims of their own success, but felt the potential revenue loss from the simultaneous release could lead to long-term positives, such as fans who otherwise would not have watched Marvel's series potentially discovering them when signing up for Disney Plus to watch Black Widow. Lawsuit. In July 2021, Johansson filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles County Superior Court against the Walt Disney Company, alleging that the simultaneous release of Black Widow in theaters and on Disney Plus breached a stipulation in her contract that the film be released exclusively in theaters. The suit claimed that the simultaneous release exempted Disney from paying very large box office bonuses that Johansson would have been entitled to. According to the Wall Street Journal, Johansson had been concerned about the possibility of the film being released on Disney Plus as early as prior to the release of Avengers Endgame, when Black Widow was still in development. Vulture contributor Chris Lee opined that not having any planned appearances in future MCU projects might have influenced Johansson's decision to move forward with filing the lawsuit. Disney issued a statement in response to the suit, saying it had no merit whatsoever, and that Johansson had shown a callous disregard for the horrific and prolonged global effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. The company claimed that they had fully complied with Johansson's contract, and that the Disney Plus Premier Access release of the film had significantly enhanced Johansson's ability to earn additional compensation beyond the $20 million she had already received for the film. Brian Lord, Johansson's agent and co-chairman of Creative Artists Agency, condemned Disney's response as shamelessly and falsely accusing Ms. Johansson of being insensitive to the global COVID pandemic. He accused the company of leaving artistic and financial partners out of their streaming profits and denounced the disclosure of Johansson's $20 million earnings as an attempt to weaponize her success as an artist and businesswoman as if that were something she should be ashamed of. The advocacy organizations, Women in Film, Reframe, and Time's Up jointly denounced Disney's response, calling it a gendered character attack, and saying they stand firmly against Disney's recent statement, which attempts to characterize Johansson as insensitive or selfish for defending her contractual business rights. The Wrap reported that Johansson was shocked by the tone of Disney's response, while Disney chairman and former CEO Bob Iger was allegedly mortified. Feige was reported to be angered and embarrassed by Disney's handling of the situation, and wanted the company to make it right with Johansson. SAG-AFTRA President Gabrielle Carteris also condemned Disney's response, saying they should be ashamed of themselves for resorting to tired tactics such as gender shaming and bullying. In response to these criticisms, Disney attorney Daniel Petrocelli called the suit a highly orchestrated public relations campaign to achieve an outcome that is not obtainable in a lawsuit. Eric Gardner at The Hollywood Reporter believed Johansson's case was potentially weak, since disputes of this kind usually take place in arbitration, and that she had been forced into presenting a claim of tortious interference rather than a standard contract breach due to a clause in her contract. Gardner added that Disney could defend not waiting for the market to recover from the pandemic, since they had already delayed the film's release by a year, and needed Black Widow to be released so they could continue the MCU, considering the film introduces important new characters, such as Yelena Belova, who was expected to appear in future MCU projects. Screen Daily editor Matt Muller told BBC News that he expected the case would be resolved between Disney and Johansson before reaching court, and expressed surprise that Disney had let it get to this stage, given Warner Bros. Had made agreements with stars for simultaneous releases in theaters and on HBO Max for films like Space Jam: A New Legacy, 2021. Miller also believed the case would prompt other studios with streaming services to look at what contractual steps they would need to prevent further legal action like this. Variety reported in July 2021 that the case had prompted other Disney actors to consider similar litigations. In August 2021, Disney filed a motion to move the lawsuit to arbitration, citing that Black Widow had outgrossed other MCU films in its opening weekend, with an impressive pandemic-era showing. Johansson's attorney, John Berlinski, criticized this move as an attempt by Disney to hide its misconduct in a confidential arbitration, while calling the company's initial response to the case misogynistic. The suit was settled a month later under undisclosed terms, though Deadline Hollywood reported that Johansson would receive over $40 million from Disney. The settlement came after Disney chose to give theatrical-only releases to subsequent 2021 films, following the box office success of Shang-Chi and Free Guy 2021, which both received exclusive theatrical windows when initially released. In November 2021, Johansson said, in regards to the lawsuit, that she felt very fortunate that nobody will have to go through what I went through and thought the case had made a positive impact in the industry and hopefully for artists and creatives' lives and livelihoods. Home media. Black Widow was released by Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment on digital download in the US on August 10, 2021, and was released on Ultra HD Blu-ray, and DVD on September 14th. Deleted scenes, a gag reel, and behind-the-scenes featurettes were included. The film was made available to all Disney Plus subscribers starting October 6th. The IMAX-enhanced version of the film was made available on Disney Plus on November 12th. Reception. Box office. Black Widow grossed $183.7 million in the United States and Canada, and $196.1 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $379.8 million. The film's opening weekend earned $226.2 million globally, which included $80.4 million at the domestic box office, $78.8 million at the international box office, and $67 million in Disney Plus Premier Access global revenue. The opening weekend gross was within or had exceeded various pre-release projections. In June 2021, Fandango reported that the film had the most ticket pre-sales in 2021, and surpassed other MCU films from previous years like Doctor Strange 2016 and Spider-Man Homecoming 2017. Black Widow earned $39.5 million on its opening day, including $13.2 million from Thursday night previews, which was the best preview night and opening day since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic in March 2020. Its total weekend gross was $80.4 million, making it the top film of the weekend. This was the largest box office opening since the COVID-19 pandemic began, surpassing F9's opening of $70 million and the largest opening weekend since Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker 2019. The domestic gross was within some of the pre-release projections for the film, but it was below some updated industry projections that were made during the weekend after the opening night, and preview grosses were known. Deadline Hollywood partially attributed this to the film's availability on Disney Plus with Premier Access, when the $80.4 million theatrical gross was combined with the domestic Premier Access revenue of $55 million, totaling over $135.4 million for its opening weekend. Disney noted that Black Widow was the only film to surpass $100 million in domestic consumer spend on opening weekend since the start of the pandemic, and it marked the third largest opening ever for an MCU origin film behind Black Panther, $212 million, and Captain Marvel, $153.4 million. Following its opening weekend, Black Widow posted the largest non-holiday Monday, $16 million, and Tuesday, $7.6 million gross in the pandemic. The film passed $100 million at the domestic box office in 6 days, the fastest to do so in the pandemic. In its second weekend, the film grossed $25.8 million, finishing second behind Space Jam: A New Legacy. Its 67% drop marked the largest sophomore week decline for an MCU film, passing Ant-Man and the Wasp. 62% box office analysts attributed Black Widow's second week decline to its Disney Plus Premier Access release, as well as widely reported piracies of the film online. In its third weekend, the film earned a further $11.6 million and became the fastest film to reach $150 million in total domestic box office gross in the pandemic. Black Widow was the fourth highest grossing film of 2021 in the United States and Canada. Outside of North America, Black Widow earned $78.8 million in its opening weekend from 46 markets. It was the #1 film in nearly all of these markets, including the markets in the Asia-Pacific region where it opened, excluding Japan, where it was third, and all markets in the Latin America region. Black Widow had the top pandemic opening weekend in 15 European markets. IMAX accounted for $4.8 million of the weekend gross from 59 countries, 11 of which set opening weekend records for the pandemic. In South Korea, the film's opening day was the second best of 2021 with $3.3 million, and Hong Kong had the best opening of the pandemic with $3.2 million. The film had the largest opening day of the pandemic in Austria, the Czech Republic, Qatar, and Slovakia, while in Saudi Arabia, the film earned the highest opening day for a Disney release ever. It was the #1 film on opening day in many other markets. As of October 2021, the top markets for the film outside of North America were South Korea, $26.3 million, the United Kingdom, $25.8 million, and France, $15.1 million. Streaming viewership. With Disney Plus Premier Access, Black Widow earned $67 million worldwide in its opening weekend. It was the first film that Disney revealed Premier Access revenue for, with the revenue skewing heavily towards the United States with $55 million viewer tracking application Samba TV, which measures at least 5 minutes of viewership on smart televisions in over 3 million U.S. households, reported that 1.1 million households watched the film in its opening weekend. Deadline Hollywood noted that this viewership translated to about $33 million in revenue for Disney, considering the $30 price of Premier Access, which lined up with the announced worldwide revenue. The site also stated that Disney was receiving about 85% of the Disney Plus Premier revenue, sharing the rest with platform providers such as Amazon Fire Stick and Apple TV+. The following weekend, Deadline Hollywood reported that Black Widow had become the most pirated film of the past week, while some industry sources believed it had become the most pirated film of the pandemic. Samba TV later updated the film's Disney Plus Premier Access viewership, reporting that the film had been streamed over 2 million times in the US over its first 10 days of release, which resulted in around $60 million in overall domestic revenue from Disney Plus. Samba TV also reported updates to 10-day viewership in the United Kingdom, 258,000, Germany, 116,000, and Australia, 47,000. In October, Samba TV reported that over 1.1 million U.S. households had watched Black Widow in the first 5 days of its availability to all subscribers on Disney+. They also reported viewership in the United Kingdom, 190,000, and Germany, 96,000, during that same time frame. As of August 2021, Black Widow had earned $125 million through streaming and digital downloads. In its first 30 days, the film was watched in over 2.8 million U.S. households. Deadline Hollywood reported the film had been pirated over 20 million times, resulting in at least $600 million in lost revenue for Disney. In January 2022, tech firm Akamai reported that Black Widow was the third most pirated film of 2021. Critical response. The review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes reported an approval rating of 79%, with an average score of 6.9 to 10, based on 462 reviews. The website's critical consensus reads, Black Widow's deeper themes are drowned out in all the action, but it remains a solidly entertaining standalone adventure that's rounded out by a stellar supporting cast. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 68 out of 100 based on reviews from 58 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Critics commonly praised the cast, particularly Johansson and Pugh, as well as the action sequences. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A/C on an A+ to F scale. while Post-Track reported that 88% of audience members gave it a positive score and 69% said they would definitely recommend the film. Owen Gleiberman of Variety initially feared that Black Widow would just be 2 hours of Johansson fighting, but found the film to be more interesting than that, despite still having fight sequences that would give a mainstream audience that getting your money's worth feeling. He praised Shortland's direction and said, "From the opening credits, most of it has a gritty, deliberate, zap-free tone that is strikingly and intentionally earthbound for a superhero fantasy." Writing for The Hollywood Reporter, David Rooney felt the film's move away from the superhero genre into a high-octane espionage thriller made it a more satisfying female-starring MCU film than the blandly bombastic Captain Marvel. At IGN, Nicole Clark discussed the ambition of the film to go beyond the superhero genre to explore the abuse and intense tragedy from Romanoff's past. At The Hollywood Reporter, Rooney described the film as a stellar vehicle for Johansson and praised her vulnerability in the film, while Gleiberman said Johansson holds the film together and gives it its touch of soul with her vulnerability, which he said was unusual for a superhero film performance. Several critics praised the film's supporting cast, with the chemistry between Johansson and Pugh in particular a highlight. Pete Hammond of Deadline Hollywood said Natasha's awkward shyness counterpunched by the lively and cynical Yelena, and praised Johansson's presence in her role. He felt Pugh was ready to lead her own franchise and also praised the performances of Weiss, Harbour, and Winstone. Leah Greenblatt of Entertainment Weekly said the relationship between Romanoff and Belova was the real love story of the film, and Nicole Clark felt the film was at its strongest in the scenes where the pair were fighting against or beside each other. Brian Tallarico of RogerEbert.com said Pugh was the film's MVP and had found just the right shades of strength and vulnerability. Karen James at the BBC also praised Pugh and said Belova was more lived in than most action movie characters. IndieWire's Eric Cohn gave the film a B grade, saying it delivered on action and praising the lower stakes. He positively compared the film's fight sequences to the Bourne franchise and said, "If this is the last time we get to see Johansson mete out justice to her assailants with gymnastic velocity, it's an apt send-off." Hammond of Deadline Hollywood agreed, writing that Johansson goes out with all guns blazing as this film does not stint one bit on the action. Gleiberman also compared the film to the Bourne franchise, while James compared it to the Mission Impossible franchise and said it was the least Avenger-like movie in the MCU so far. She gave the film 4 out of 5 stars, but did criticize the ending as being typical of the franchise. Writing for Vanity Fair, Richard Lawson praised Shortland's direction of the action sequences and the film's more grounded physics. Despite calling the film stylish and fun, Joshua Rivera of Polygon said it came across as hollow and like an apology for Romanoff's death in Endgame. Similarly, Hoai Tran Bui at Film felt the film was too little too late after the character's death, and Matt Goldberg at Collider felt the film wasted the chance to further explore the Budapest mission in Romanoff's past in favor of introducing Belova as a replacement Black Widow. Anne Hornaday at The Washington Post had similar thoughts, noting the setup for Pugh to continue in the franchise and feeling the film did not make up for Johansson getting short shrift in earlier MCU installments. Accolades. Black Widow was one of 28 films that received the Reframe stamp for 2021, awarded by the Gender Equity Coalition Reframe for films that are proven to have gender-balanced hiring. Documentary Special. Main article, Marvel Studios Assembled. In February 2021, the documentary series Marvel Studios Assembled was announced. The specials go behind the scenes of the MCU films and television series with cast members and additional creatives. A special for this film, The Making of Black Widow, featuring Johansson, was released on Disney Plus on October 20th, 2021. Future. Pugh reprised her role as Belova in the Disney Plus series Hawkeye, continuing the storyline that is set up by the film's post-credits scene. In June 2021, Shortland expressed interest in directing another film in the MCU and noted that a potential sequel to Black Widow would likely revolve around a different character following Romanoff's death. Weiss said she would be interested in a future storyline featuring Vostokov assuming her Iron Maiden comic book persona. There's an added poignancy to the year-plus delay of Marvel's Black Widow, finally ending July 9th when the film will be in theaters and available for a premium charge on Disney Plus. And there's a palpable sense that this story would have felt a little delayed, even in May 2020. After all, why did Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man get 3 standalone films before Natasha Romanoff got one? Fans complained long before the pandemic that it felt like Black Widow was getting pushed aside, only given her own adventure after the end of her story in Avengers Endgame. Director Cate Shortland's movie confirms that Black Widow could have carried her own flick ages ago. There's enough character, backstory, and intrigue in her world for a whole series. A lot of movies in 2021 have felt a bit different because of their existence in a post-COVID world. But for all of these reasons, Black Widow feels distinctly like a pre-COVID product, a dip into the history of one of Marvel's most popular characters that's truly better, so very late than never. The best aspects of Black Widow echo the 70s spy movie tone of one of the best films in the MCU, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Director Shortland and writer Eric Pearson, an MCU vet behind both Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame, along with Thor, Spider-Man, Ant-Man films, and the ABC TV shows, unabashedly pull from beloved action and espionage classics with elements that echo the Bourne films. Mission Impossible, The Manchurian Candidate, and most of all, James Bond. A clip from 007 even plays on a television in the film. And yet Black Widow incorporates all of these spy action greats into something that feels alive and original on its own terms, thanks largely to tight action choreography by Shortland and a great cast that centers 4 very engaging performances from Scarlett Johansson, David Harbour, Rachel Weisz, and, most of all, Florence Pugh. F9 may have a lock on the word family this season, but it's also the main theme of Black Widow. Natasha Romanoff is on the run from one makeshift family when she's thrust back into the arms of another. The film opens with a scene right out of The Americans, as it's revealed that a young Natasha and her sister Yelena, played as an adult by Pugh, had a brief life in Ohio under parental figures Alexei, Harbour, and Melina Weisz. They seemed like a normal family, but mom and dad were really Russian spies, and the girls were only being prepped for their coming induction in a super soldier program back in the homeland. After an explosive opening, the credits for Black Widow reveal that Natasha and Yelena were turned from average girls to killing machines, separated when Romanoff murdered the head of the program, Dreykov, Ray Winstone, and destroyed his Red Room. Or did she? Jump ahead to just after Captain America's Civil War, when Natasha is on the run from her own government, underground after violating the Sokovia Accords. While she's off the grid, she receives a package from Yelena, who is suffering through her own forced exile after discovering a substance that releases the widows from their chemical subjugation. It's very intentionally a reversal of the super soldier serum concept that drove the action of projects like The Falcon versus the Winter Soldier, wherein Bucky Barnes stories often centered on vials that could make ordinary men into killing machines. Black Widow centers on vials that can turn killing machines back into ordinary women. Yelena sends a case of the vials to her sister, knowing it will bring her to a safe house in Budapest. From there, they're forced to break Alexei, aka the Red Guardian, out of prison, and eventually reunite with the Black Widow who really made them, Melina. Like a lot of the MCU, Black Widow is a bit thin in the villain department. New ads have highlighted the inclusion of the Taskmaster, a killing machine who can mimic its enemies' fighting skills, and those scenes do stand out in terms of action, but parts of the film lack the urgency that would have been provided by a stronger enemy. Having said that, Shortland knows how to keep Black Widow more sleek than a lot of other MCU directors. It's a more driven film than we often get from the MCU, deftly moving from one action set piece to another, only losing its momentum in a couple scenes, an extended family reunion, and one of the talkiest showdown scenes in history in the third act. Although one almost wonders if Shortland and Pearson aren't parodying the Bond films again here with their legacy of monologuing bad guys. It's not often the case in the MCU, but the pace is an asset here as Black Widow tells a relatively simple story with significantly less fat than a lot of other superhero flicks. It makes sense that a no-nonsense killing machine like Black Widow should have a no-nonsense installment, but it's nice to see it actually happened. That's not to say there aren't a few diversions for character and some interesting playing around with themes. There's a fun duality to Black Widow that should make returns to other projects in this universe more engaging. It purposefully echoes themes of covert government programs from projects like Winter Soldier, revealing that the Americans don't have the market cornered, and it also deepens Natasha's lifelong battle between being a lone wolf and needing a pack with which to run Much was written about how WandaVision made previous MCU projects richer, and there are elements of Black Widow that should do the same not only for Johansson's previous projects, but for Pugh's going forward. It's a standalone film that doesn't just exist in a vacuum, but enhances the films in which Black Widow stood with others. On that note, hardcore fans of Romanoff may be unhappy how much spotlight she cedes here to the other members of her family, particularly Red Guardian and Yelena, but both actors are good enough that complaints shouldn't land. Harbour's take on Russia's version of Captain America is a clever one, finding just the right balance of humor and bravado. Countering his performance here to his one in this week's No Sudden Move, reveals a significant range for an actor who feels like he's on the verge of a remarkable decade of work. However, the film really belongs to Pugh, who nails every single line reading in a project that's clearly designed to hand the baton off from Johansson to Pugh, who will appear in Disney Plus' Hawkeye in much the same way that Captain America's shield went from Steve Rogers to Sam Wilson. Pugh proves more than up for the challenge, finding just the right shades of strength and vulnerability. It's a top-tier MCU performance and the film's MVP. As with a lot of the MCU, the third act here gets a little cluttered and repetitive, but then the film recovers with a remarkable final action sequence that sends characters and debris hurtling through the sky. An MCU staple, but Shortland's choreography makes it feel urgent again. It's ultimately a film that works on its own terms, a long-delayed enriching of the story of a beloved character that will make her ultimate sacrifice in Avengers Endgame feel even more powerful in hindsight. Every blockbuster this summer is being touted as the sign that the world is back to normal. Black Widow is more a reminder of what fans loved before it shifted off its axis. Plot: in Marvel Studios' action-packed spy thriller Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, confronts the darker parts of her ledger when a dangerous conspiracy with ties to her past arises. Pursued by a force that will stop at nothing to bring her down, Natasha must deal with her history as a spy and the broken relationships left in her wake long before she became an Avenger. Review. This past year I've grown rather fond of the MCU. Before I could take it or leave it. But with all of the craziness, it's been nice to escape into another world. So I've rewatched a lot of the films to refresh my memory, as a lot had happened over the course of 10 years. Black Widow was one of the victims of COVID, having its release date moved a few times, and now it's finally here. But is it worth the wait? I thought it was an odd choice to release this film after Avengers Endgame. Spoiler alert for Endgame. Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff, was never a character that particularly interested me because she came across as cold. So after her sacrifice in Endgame, I didn't feel anything as I hadn't really grown to care for her. If this film had come first, it would have given extra weight to Endgame, and Black Widow's payoff would have had more emotional impact. The first hour of Black Widow is action-packed and keeps a relentless pace going while also giving the characters time to develop. I especially enjoyed the relationship between Natasha and her sister Yelena, Florence Pugh, which gave the film more heart than I expected. We finally get to know more of Natasha's backstory, and she is fleshed out feeling like a more rounded character. Yelena is tough but appealing as she laments her stolen childhood and really just wants to have a normal family. David Harbour nearly steals the show as Alexei Shostakov, aka Red Guardian, providing a lot of the humor, especially one scene involving a helicopter, which I personally found hilarious. Rachel Weisz also never disappoints, and at various times, we are made to question whose side she is really on. Ray Winston makes for a fittingly mean villain, even if he isn't all that memorable. But he has a commanding presence which makes him more intimidating. Like so many modern blockbusters, however, Black Widow nearly comes to a complete standstill in the midsection, where the pacing stops stone dead. Up until then, we had some awesome fight scenes, and Taskmaster made for a cool adversary, although comic fans may be irked by how different the character is from the comics, but I felt was a little underused. It's like in Civil War when they are all at the farmhouse. There's a scene like that in this which gives the characters time to breathe, but it needed to be tighter, as it got dull quickly, making the film longer than it needed to be. There is a lot of noticeable CG, especially with every single explosion. And, as always for the finale, it goes a little into visual effects overload, but to be fair, they are for the most part effective. And at least there isn't a giant laser that fires into the sky. This is a darker tale than what we usually see in Marvel movies, and I don't feel like it would be suitable for younger kids, but Then I was 9 when I watched the original RoboCop, and look how I turned out. Wait, never mind. Tonally, it's similar to Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so these post-Endgame tales all feel genuinely connected. Aside from the main Avengers theme, the Marvel music scores haven't exactly been iconic, and Black Widow is no different. But it's still impressive, giving us some epic Russian-sounding choirs, especially over the end credits, which was a highlight. Picking up where 2016's Captain America Civil War left off, Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, is in exile in Norway when her annoying, estranged little sister Yelena, Florence Pugh, gets in touch. A fellow graduate of the sinister Red Room, General Drykov's Russian Academy for Training and Brainwashing Female Assassins. Yelena has been deprogrammed and plans to free the other girls with her sister's help. Their mission to take down Drykov, Ray Winstone, involves an alpine action sequence and an army of angels of death. It feels ripped from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, though unlike a Bond film, there's no flirting and certainly no sex. There is, however, the underlying threat of misogyny. I recycle the trash, purrs Drykov, remarking that girls are the only natural resource the world has too much of. His widows are lobotomized and given forced hysterectomies. Yet the film spends scant time exploring the implications of these darker themes, and doesn't attempt to understand the root of Drykov's God complex. Instead, it's more comfortable in comedy mode, and most interested in the family dynamic between Natasha, Yelena, and their adopted parents, scientist Melina, Rachel Weisz, and former special agent Alexei, David Harbour, having a blast as a bumbling, past-it superhero whose costume no longer fits. Yelena is a perfect comic foil for the opaque, steely Natasha, a sparkling pinwheel of energy whose warmth and sardonic humor should cement her place as a new fan favorite in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While our big baddie Ray Winston's Drav is a human man with too much power who treats women as commodities, the movie has some of the usual Marvel Studios pitfalls. The final act is CGI heavy and convoluted. And for a gritty real-world movie, some of the false Nat takes are almost as ridiculous as Ray Winston's Russian accent. But you'd have to be pretty hard of heart to have that as your main takeaway. We've waited way too long, but at last we have a Black Widow film that doesn't attach her justice. And though it feels like we were only just getting to know her, a Black Widow gives Nat a legacy that could reach wide into the MCU and might just change it for the better. This past year, grown rather fond of the MCU before I could take it or leave it. But with all of the craziness, it's been nice to escape into another world. So I've rewatched a lot of the films to refresh my memory, as a lot had happened over the course of 10 years. Black Widow was one of the victims of Co having its release date moved a few times, and now it's finally here. But is it worth the wait? I thought it was an odd choice to release this film after Avengers Endgame. Spoiler alert for Endgame. Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanoff, was never a character that particularly interested me because she came across as cold. So after her sacrifice in Endgame, I didn't feel anything, as I hadn't really grown to care for her. If this film had come first, it would have given extra weight to Endgame, and Black Widow's payoff would have had more emotional impact. The first hour of Black Widow is action-packed and keeps a relentless pace going while also giving the characters time to develop. I especially enjoyed the relationships between Natasha and her sister Yelena Florence Pugh, which gave the film more heart than I expected. We finally get to know more of Natasha's backstory, and she is fleshed out feeling like a more rounded character. Yelena is tough but appealing, as she laments her stolen childhood and really just wants to have a normal family. David Harbour nearly steals the show as Alexei Shostakal, aka Red Guardian, providing a lot of the humor, especially one scene involving a helicopter, which I personally found hilarious. Rachel Weisz also never disappoints, and at various times, we are made to question whose side she is really, and all broken bar Winston makes for a fittingly mean villain. Even if he isn't all that memorable, but he has a commanding presence which makes him more intimidating, like so many modern blockbusters. However, Black Widow nearly comes to a complete standstill in the midsection, where the pacing stops stone dead. Up until then, we had some awesome fight scenes, and Taskmaster made for a cool adversary, although comic fans may be irked by how different the character is from the comics. But I felt was a little underused. It's like in Civil War when they are all at the farmhouse, There is a scene like that in this which gives the characters time to breathe, but it needed to be tighter as it got dull quickly, making the film longer than it needed to be. There was a lot of noticeable CG, especially with every single explosion. And as always, for the finale, it goes a little into visual effects overload, but to be fair, they are for the most part effective. And at least there isn't a giant laser that fires into the sky. This is a darker tale than what we usually see in Marvel movies, and I don't feel like it would be suitable for younger kids. But then, I was 9 when I watched the original RoboCop, and look how I turned out a broken bar. Wait, never mind. Tonally, it's similar to Foul and the Winter Soldier. So these post-Endgame tales all feel genuinely connected. Aside from the main Avengers theme, the Marvel music scores haven't exactly been iconic, and Black Widow is no different, but it's still impressive, giving us some epic Crush-sounding choirs, especially over the end credits, which was a highlight. Stay tuned for the post-Reddit scene, which I obviously won't spoil, but I thought it was one of the best in a Willy Broken Bar overall. Black Widow has some spectacular action scenes, especially in the first half, but is let down by a sagging midsection and noticeable CG. It's nice to see Natasha get a proper movie of her own, and Scarlett makes her more appealing than she has ever been. There are some heartfelt moments and touches of humor without going overboard to make this a fitting send-off for the character. There's an added poignancy to the year-plus delay of Marvel's Black Widow finally ending July 9th, and when the film will be in theaters and available for a premium charge on Disney+. And there's a palpable sense that this story would have felt a little delayed even in May 2020. After all, why did Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man get 3 standalone films before Natasha Romanoff got one? Fans complained long before the pandemic that it felt like Black Widow was getting pushed aside, only given her own adventure after the ant of her story in Avengers Endgame. Director Cate Shortland's movie confirms that Black Widow could have carried her own flick ages ago. There's enough character backstory and intrigue in her world for a whole series. A lot of movies in 2021, Javier felt a bit different because of their existence in a post-cabin world. But for all of these reasons, Black Widow feels distinctly like a pre-COVID product. A dip into the history of one of Marvel's most popular characters that's truly better so very late than never. The best aspects of Black Widow echo the A70s spy movie tone of one of the best films in the MCU. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, director Shortland and writer Eric Parisa, an MCU vet behind both Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame, along with Thorpe, Spider-Man, Ant-Man films and the ABC TV shows, unabashedly pull from beloved action and espionage classics with elements that echo the Bourne films, Mission, Impossible, The Manchurian Candidate, and most of all, James Bond, a clip from '07. Even plays on at television in the film, and yet Black Widow incorporates all of these spy action great into something that feels alive and original on its own terms, thanks largely to tight action choreography by Shortland, and a great cast that centers for very engaging performances from a Scarlett Johansson, a David Harbour, a Rachel Weisz, and most of all, a Florence Pugh. F9 may have a lock on the word family this season, but it's also the main theme of Black Widow. Natasha Romanoff is on the run from one makeshift family when she's thrust back into the arms of another. The film opens with a scene right out of The Americans, as it's revealed that the young Natasha and her sister Yelena, played as an adult by Pugh, had a brief life in Ohio. Under parental figures Alexi Harbour and Molina Weiss, they seemed like a normal family, but a mom and a dad were really Russian spies, and the girls were only being prepped for their coming induction in a super soldier program back in the homeland. After an explosive opening, the credits for Black Widow revealed that Natasha and Yelena were turned from average girls to killing machines, separated when Romanoff murdered the head of the program, Drav Ray Winstone, and destroyed his Red Room. Or did she jump ahead to just after Captain America's Civil War when Natasha is on the run from her own government underground after violating the Soya Accords? While she's off the grid, she receives a package from Yelena, who is suffering through her own forced exile after discovering a substance that releases the widows from their chemical subjugation. It's very intentionally a reversal of the super soldier serum concept that drove the action of projects like the Fallen versus the Winter Soldier, where in Bucky Barnes, stories often centered on vials that could make ordinary men into killing machines. Black Widow centers on vials that can turn killing machines back into ordinary women. Yelena sends a case of the vials to her sister, knowing it will bring her to a safe house in Budapest. From there, they are forced to break Alexei, aka the Red Guardian, out of prison, and eventually reunite with the Black Widow who really made them, Melina. Like a lot of the MCU, Black Widow is a bit thin in the villain department. New ads have highlighted the inclusion of the Taskmaster, a killing machine who can mimic its enemies' fighting skills. And those scenes do stand out in terms of action, but parts of the film lack the urgency that would have been provided by a stronger enemy. Having said that, Shortland knows how to keep Black Widow more sleek than a lot of other MCU directors. It's a more driven film than we often get from the MCU. Definitely moving from one action set piece to another, only losing its momentum in a couple scene as an extended family reunion, and one of the talkiest showdown scenes in history in the third act. Although one almost wonders if Shortland and Pearson aren't parodying the Bond films again here with their legacy of monologuing bad guys. It's not often the case in the MCU, but the pace is an asset here as Black Widow tells a relatively simple story with significantly less fat than a lot of other superhero flicks. It makes sense that a no-nonsense killing machine like Black Widow should have a no-nonsense installment, but it's nice to see it actually happened. That's not to say there aren't a few diversions for character and some interesting playing around with themes. There's a fun duality to Black Widow that should make returns to other projects in this universe more engaging. It purposefully echoes themes of covert government, programs from projects like Winter Soldier, revealing that the Americans don't have the market cornered, and it also deepens Natasha's lifelong battle between being a lone wolf and needing a pack with which to run. Much was written about how W Division made previous MCU projects richer, and there are elements of Black Widow that should do the same, not only for Johnson's previous projects, but for Pugh's going forward. It's a standalone film that doesn't just exist in a vacuum, but enhances the films in which Black Widow stood with others. On that note, hardcore fans of Romanoff may be unhappy how much spotlight she sees here to the other members of her family, particularly Red Guardian and Yelena, but both actors are good enough that complaints shouldn't land. Harbour's take on Russia's version of Captain America is a clever one. Finding just the right balance of humor and bravado with countering his performance here to his one, in this week's No Sudden Move, reveals a significant change for an actor who feels like he's on the verge of a remarkable decade of work. However, the film really belongs to Pugh, who nails every single line reading in a project that's clearly designed to hand a baton off from Johansson to Pugh, who will appear in Disney Plus' Hawkeye. In much the same way that Captain America's shield went from Steve Rogers to Sam Wilson, Pugh proved an up for the challenge, finding just the right shades of strength and vulnerability. It's a top-tier MCU performance in the film's MVP as with a lot of the MCU, the third act here gets a little cluttered and repetitive. But then the film recovers with a remarkable final action sequence that sends characters and debris hurtling through the sky. An MCU staple, but Shortland's choreography makes it feel urgent again. It's ultimately a film that works on its own terms along delayed enriching of the story of a beloved character that will make her ultimate sacrifice in Avengers. Endgame feel even more powerful in hindsight. Every blockbuster this summer is being touted as the sign that the world is back to normal, or Black Widow is more a reminder of one fan's love before it shifted off its axis. It's basically a James Bond flick. Early on at a safe house in Norway, Natasha Scarlett Johansson watches Moonraker on TV and happily repeats one of Bond's quips. I discovered she had a crush on me. Think of it as a hat tip. Black Widow is an action-adventure romp in which spies battle each other in glamorous international cities. It even ends a law bond with our captured heroes, blowing up and escaping from the villains outright the copyright lair. We even get a reprise of Moonraker's most famous stunt, the hero falling from the sky without a parachute, maneuvering to acquire one. There's even a Bond girl. Well, sure, Scarlett, but since she's Bond in this analogy, the Bond girl is her sister, Yelena Bova, Florence Pugh. Excellent. We finally get their backstory. Turns out it's the Americans. In small-town Ohio, 1995, young Natasha and Yelena learned their parents, Alexei and Melina, David Harbour, and Rachel Weisz, are Russian spies, and they have to flee past high school football games and one step ahead of Shelby to get out of the country. They also learn by and by that their parents aren't their parents. They're just agents. The girls are orphans, widows in the movie's vernacular who are inculcated into the horrific widow programmed by the villainous Jen Drav. Ray Winstone also excellent. At this point, we get the opening credits, and it's a moment where the movie deviates from the fun Bond thing. Bond's credits are silhouettes of sexy women doing gymnastics on guns over the rocker's vocals of the pop star of the moment. Here we get shots of young girls separated from families by faceless soldiers over the deadened vocals of Up Anger's version of Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's powerful. Hell, it's a kind of critique of Bond credits. You like slinky spy girls? Well, this is the horror that made them. And sure, why are there Soviet spies in the US 4 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union? And why is Natasha's superhero name a reference to the Soviet-era program that broke her and hundreds of other girls? You'd think she'd want distance from that, but onward. Other orphan girls are indoctrinated not only with training, but chemicals. It's in Morocco taking down a rogue agent that Yelena is sprayed with the red powder that frees her mind and sets her on a path to take down Drika's infamous Red Room. First, she sends the extra vials of red powder to Natasha at her safe house, which a broken bar. How does she know where to send them? I guess they're forwarded more. How does Taskmaster, the masked Russian villain, know where to find Natasha? Who knows? But their bridge battle, nicely done, propels Natasha to Budapest, Budap, and a rocky reunion with CIS. After the obligatory fight, they team up and flee from Taskmaster and the Widows. More backstory. Natasha was able to join Sheld when she assassinated Drav, both the shades of Munich, as she had to blow up his young daughter Antonia too. She feels guilty about that, but Yelena lets her know no drab lives, and I'll cut to the chasey. So does Antonia. She's Taskmaster one-time Bond girl Arango, so that's nice. Natasha has less to feel guilty about. At the same time, it means she completely failed her first assignment. Oh well. The two sisters then said about freeing Dad from prison Harbour as the superpowered out of shape. Red Guardian is great, and the three reunite with Mom, the brains of the operation, out in the country. But she betrays them to Drav, and they're flown to the Red Room, which is like a cloud city. But at some point, Molina has a change of heart. So the Molina who shows up is really Natasha and Natasha Molina. And this allows our hero FaceTime with the villain whom she can't kill some kind of pheromone prohibitor. Except she knows it, which is why she allowed Rykov to punch her the way he did. Sadly, he wasn't strong enough to sever the nerves. She has to do that herself. I would have liked it better if she'd killed him there immediately. But of course, he escapes and then dies trying to get out of his exploding cloud city while Natasha parachute-less saves Yelena and then battles and saves Freeze, Taskmaster Antonia. She's also downloaded into where all the widows are around the world. She will free them too. She was busy between the wars. Black Widow was written by Eric Pearson, who also wrote a Thor Ragnarok Nice and a Godzilla vs. Kongonaut, and who was apparently on set for filming. He overheard Beauty teasing Johansson about Black Widow's three-point stance and hair flip, for example. So he had Yelena Natasha, similarly. I like that kind of thing. The director was Cate Shortland, who has written and directed a lot of psychological female C-centric stories, Laura Berlin Syndrome, but who per IMDb has nothing else on her plate. Why we're in an era when Hollywood is looking under every other rock for female directors, and here's a good one. And yet nothing. I guess she and the movie got screwed over by the times too. Its original release date was May 1st, 2020. The first of the MCU Phase 4 stuff. But of course, COVID shut everything down. So it was delayed until November 2020, then May 2021, then July 2021. And then it was released both in theaters Saw and on Disney+, leading to a lawsuit from Janssen, who was set to get a cut of the box office, which the presence on Disney+ would and did cut into. The lawsuit was settled last September. Amid all that, I think Shortland and the movie got short shrift. Again, it's fun and zippy with an occasional dark undercurrent, as in the opening credits. I like the evocations of Americana as they flee Ohio lawns, fireflies, Friday Night Lights, American Pie. I talk about the movie being like a James Bond movie, but it's also deeper and more poignant than Bond. One of the first lines we hear is from young Yelena Violet McGraw to young Natasha Ever Anderson. They're on a playground goofing around and having a contest about who can do a backbend the longest. We're both upside down. Yelena says it's a little kid's line. But more than that, after they've beaten the bad guys and fallen to Earth, Yelena repeats, it. It makes you realize that these are women who have lived their entire lives upside down, and the thrust of the film is getting them right side up again. When Natasha's childhood began to play on the screen in the new Black Widow movie, I was pleasantly surprised at the execution of it. It was filled with mystery and intrigue, leaving me wanting to know more and staying to do so. However, that is where its quality ended. The rest of the film is a mix of trying too hard to be funny, deplorable writing, and attempting to tackle serious topics while failing in the process. The movie lacked creativity, as I think is made clear in the course the movie runs in by certain sequences, such as the sad excuse of a plan for getting the Red Guardian, David Harbour, out of prison. It doesn't make any sense that the Red Guardian broke himself out of prison when Natasha Romanoff, Scarlett Johansson, and Yelena Bova, Florence Pugh, were more than skilled enough to get him out without making such a scene. They are better than and more talented than him. Yet, that is never shown during the film. It is embarrassing and boring to watch. Having a man stumble around to get where he needs to and cause a ruckus is less than thrilling. And having an avalanche at the end does not make it any more exciting or less dull. To make matters worse, the Red Guardian is the lamest excuse of a character I have ever seen on screen. He enrages those around him by being a terrible father and sticking his foot in his mouth. He is a waste of space after the opening of the film. His character was not needed. Yet, for some foolish reason, the writers saw fit to have him anyway. Why? Perhaps for an attempt at comedic relief. But even then, what comes out of his mouth is trying too hard to be funny and makes things a disaster. If you're going to introduce a new character, at least make him useful and have him contribute to the plot of the movie instead of being a laughingstock for the audience. Even the person who was supposed to be the villain of the entire film was weak. Drav Ray Winstone was built up to be this intelligent and cunning opponent. But instead, what we get is a character who is only in the entire film for about 10 minutes, and is also incredibly childish. He is like a 5-year-old in an old man's body. He possesses no intimidation or attributes of a man with his reputation or position. It is clear that little thought went into the person, who is supposed to be Black Widow's adversary, and as a result, we are left with a whining man sitting behind the desk. The writers should have thought to at least give Black Widow the courtesy of a worthy opponent, because Drav was not. Ultimately, Black Widow was rushed and the film suffered for it. The creators did not give it the time it deserved by any means, and instead slapped together the half-thought-out ideas they had and called it a movie. Sadly, it's a poor excuse and a missed opportunity. If they had taken more time to think through what they were creating, they could have made a film like no other about a character that many people have come to love. Yet instead, they chose to rush it and created an incredibly dull and boring movie, one which disappointed many fans. Black Widow had so much potential, especially with an incredibly talented cast and a captivating character. Unfortunately, all that potential was wasted on this film. I could say more about what went wrong with this movie, like how Natasha deserved better. But I'll end with this. Marvel claimed it was worth the wait. Yet, I could wait another 10 years, and it still would not be worth the 2 hours I spent watching this film. At birth, the Black Widow, aka Natasha Romanova, is given to the KGB, which grooms her to become its ultimate operative. When the USSR breaks up, the government tries to kill her as the action moves to present-day New York, where she is a freelance operative. Black Widow is an excellent movie, but no matter how much Marvel gilds the lily, Natasha is no longer with this world, and that was hard to let go of. In case anyone out there is unaware, this is not a spoiler, as Black Widow died in Avengers Endgame when seeking to obtain the Soul Infinity Stone alongside Hawkeye. Black Widow was one of my favorite heroes in the Marvel Universe all throughout the past decade. And when the powers that be decided to kill off her character, I was admittedly furious. A Scarlett Johansson has done an exceptional job of portraying the superhero, and specialized fighting skills have always been a thrill to watch. A Scarlett Johansson always pulled off these fight moves flawlessly. Watching Black Widow made me realize that there is an ultimate power in the Marvel Universe more powerful and stronger than Thanos. More powerful and stronger than the strongest creator or other universal entities, to include the Beyonder, the Celestials, or any massively powerful being. Even the forces that be at the time Variant's authority, cannot hold a candle to this ultimate Marvel power. It's Mickey Mouse, or it's Kevin Feige, or the Russo brothers, or anyone else who decides whether or not Black Widow, or Iron Man, or Loki, or any other Marvel superhero, or super blind eyes. P.S. Don't miss the Disney Plus series Loki. It is exceptional in streaming. Now, look, I get it. There has to be a sense of something at stake. If every hero is immortal, what is the worry to lose something? In my entire childhood as a Marvel Comics fanatic, I don't remember a superhero dying, and though such a concept considering superheroes fought supervillains, Alien Brood, Damn Spawn, and more, I can only think of one or two lesser characters that died. As a kid, I was okay with that. Is that a realistic concept? Likely not. But if we are going to get all adulty about it, neither is flying or adamantium bones realistic. I dove into the comic book world to escape the pains of my childhood, where heroes always won. The fight for right was always rewarded, and the truly heroic always won in the end and lived to fight another day. Though some of these principles of a superheroic life might have been far-fetched, I never questioned it and dedicated myself to preserving my memories, my hopes, my dreams of one day being able to fly to heal my wounds at super speed and to shoot plasma bolts from my fingertips, all kept pristine behind the confines of plastic comic covers and acid-free cardboard backings. And so with my tail tucked and sorrow felt in my soul, I embarked on the Black Widow journey. It really was as awesome as I expected. A Black Widow is a family story of sorts where a group of dysfunctional family members, each with their own set of super skills gained after meeting up 20+ years later, must work together to battle their arch-enemy. Or do they? Are they all on the same side? I am not going to reveal any spoilers in this review, but the journey with incredibly well-done choreography and explosive interactions one grows to expect in a Marvel movie. And as much as the movie was filled with awesome fights, explosions, and chase scenes, to me the best part of this movie were the smart Alec and remarks you can only find within the dysfunctional family dynamic. My favorite moments were the small talk by Natasha Romanoff and Yelena Belova, who are both byproducts of the Black Widow and Red Room Assassin program. I also love the utter lovable dorkiness of David Harbour as Alexei Shastakov, aka the Red Guardian, essentially the Russian version of Captain America and the world's first supposed super soldier. Was surprised that a lot of the Black Widow history was held intact. Yes, thanks to the Red Room, there were a worldwide team of young women, Black Widow assassins, waiting for the call to take out the next threat. According to the forces that beat the history of Yelena, Natasha's sister, are respectfully pretty close to accurate in terms of the comics histories. I always appreciate such efforts, and yes, though I grieve, I also feel some excitement for where this Marvel story will continue to go. Yes, absolutely. It is worth the purchase. I received a screener, and I am still going to watch it again when the film is released, though I've watched it already more than once. One of the coolest aspects of Black Widow is the essence of female superhero empowerment. I also appreciated that a Scarlett Johansson seemed to own her space and place in the film. It was a sense of effortlessness that I haven't seen before. I would compare it to a professor at a university who receives tenure, and, because they can no longer be fired, teaches with unforgiveness to become the best version of themselves. The Marvel Universe, which has given us 24 films, so far over the years, is something I haven't experienced. While most films dive into the personal explorations of superheroes, this one delved into the family dynamic more than before. Or at least the family dynamic of dysfunction that I am certainly most familiar with. I really did love the film, but throughout the collage of firefights, chase scenes, choreographed fight scenes, and hilarious quips, my heart, Cate, and my stomach felt uneasy. Inasmuch as Marvel has pulled off another masterpiece that I will never forget and turn to again and again over the years, I felt as if I was watching a ghost. I enjoyed the film much like I might enjoy a Node family movie of the best birthday party ever. But the guest of Honor had died years ago. Black Widow mixes great action with a tedious script, predictable plot, and overly long runtime. The results are mixed. If I had to describe Black Widow's fight scenes using one word only, I'd say rag doll. Bodies are tossed into walls, out of vehicles, off bridges, through windows, into the air, and onto the ground like rag dolls. The action is fast-paced and furious, And while the fight scene of Black Widow are not particularly blood, yeah, it's the MCU. After all, they're often surprisingly brutal. Since there are many fights and a great deal of action, it's an entertaining enough movie for a dose of superhero fun and escapism. There's plenty to like about a Black Widow. It can be funny at times as if you're not too burnt out on the MCU's trademark brand of humor. It's exciting and violent with lots of fun locations that fly by almost too fast to notice. There is a formula to most Marvel movies, and a Black Widow only flirts briefly with abandoning it before returning wholesale. By about the halfway point, or maybe sooner, you should be able to chart out exactly what's going to happen in the second half. In fact, after the opening act, I found myself drifting, getting antsy. The action scenes are fun, but often too predictable. And there are so many that even the better, more elaborate set pieces, like a Russian prison about to be crushed under a massive avalanche, start to feel tired. Meanwhile, the personal drama isn't compelling or surprising enough to occupy as much screen time as it does, and I found myself coming back to my current running theory that most movies these days, and especially most superhero movies, are about 20 minutes too long. As a guiding principle, this could be applied to a startling number of genre films. Cutting 20 to 30 minutes would almost always help, making for more palatable, less tedious cinematic experiences. I said the same thing about Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. A cut 20 minutes or so, and you have a better paced picture. A Black Widow runs 2 hours and 14 minutes. This is at least 20 minutes too long, but probably more like 30. If I went back through the movie again, I guarantee I could point out every single scene that could be cut or shortened. That avalanche scene I mentioned up above, it would have been a lot better if we hadn't already been so inundated with so much action. What happened to 1 hour and 45-minute long movies? Actually, they're still out there. A Quiet Place 2A is just 1 hour and 37 minutes, and it definitely doesn't need to be any longer than that. It's economical and tells a complete story with a skillful mix of action and drama and a satisfying resolution that arrives just in time. John Wicker sits well under the 2-hour mark at 1 hour and 42 minutes, and not a minute of it is wasted. Black Widow dotless even when everything is exploding. It drags its feet in every character-driven scene that doesn't involve guns blazing or a fistfight, and the ending is painfully slow. The movie is too long, and the pacing suffers for it, especially as we get into the latter half. There are our opinion about the film as a whole. A Black Widow's placement on the MCU timeline and its actual release date simply don't make sense. The movie takes place after Captain America, Civil War on Before Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. In the latter of those films, Black Widow is killed, and she isn't snapped back to life in the UN spanning. She's dead and gone. Logistics and other business issues conspired to push this film back many years after it ought to have been released, and watching it just feels weird. We know she dies, but unlike knowing that Vision is dead, Dean WandaVision, and we don't have any big mysteries to unravel. No big questions to ask since the movie simply takes place before the other films. Black Widow is a fine MCU film, a perfectly average in every way, and I'm not sure that's enough to justify its existence. If it were truly great, I could shrug off timeline issues, but it's not. It's decidedly okay. Scarlett Johansson is still great in the role. I very much enjoyed David Harbour as Soviet, superhero Red Guardian as some much-needed comic relief. The rest of the cast, including Florence Pugh as Yelena and Rachel Weisz as Melina, does a fun job. It was kind of fun to see Ott Fagbell here with the British accent. Since I'm so used to him as Luke Froma, The Handmaid's Tale, young Natasha is played by Ever Anderson, who looked so familiar I had to Google her. Turns out she's the daughter of Paul W.S. Anderson and Milo Valvage, which explains things. So, a fine cast to be sure. It's just that there really isn't much to work with, especially after the opening moments. I wanted more mystery or a clever heist or two or anything that could elevate this picture from straight action to something more Bondian. But Bond movies are sexy and MCU movies are mostly devoid of sex. Bond movies have a sharp edge, a tuxedo to hide that silenced pistol beneath. A martini in hand, a Black Widow is all fists and grenades. The movie tries too hard to say too many things and ends up saying nothing much at all except that in predictable MCU fashion, the good guys will win and the bad guys will lose. neither heroes nor villains manage to be particularly interesting along the way. On both sides, we deal with remarkably shallow characterization. Even for a superhero film, frankly, number. It's something you should watch if you enjoy the character. I do. And some good fight scenes. There are many, but it doesn't really add any new layers to the MCU and feels oddly out of place, given where that franchise is now. It's fine, but it's not $30 fine. If you're going to see it, go to the movie theaters so you can experience all the spectacle as it's intended. Loud, boisterous, and flashy. Just be prepared to get a little bored and not Aquaman levels of bored. But bored nonetheless, there are more than a couple very good jump scares that will resonate in the movie theater more than at home. Also, all told, I give you a Black Widow and middling score. It's a fine, entertaining movie about Natasha, Romang and her fake family. And we're introduced to some cool characters like Taskmaster, whose fight scenes are among the most entertaining in the film, though, whose secret identity is sure to be divisive. But it drags too much and doesn't really expand the universe in cool, creative ways. It's basically a Tom Cruise spy thriller, but with Black Widow and superpowers and, well, not really any heists. And maybe that's all it needs to be. Nothing special, nothing really bold or daring or awful and glaring. It's the MCU in a nutshell. Truth be told, playing it safe while pretending not to. If you want to watch something about Soviet spies that's actually great, check out At the American, a ridiculously underrated show that, while not perfect, tackles family, political intrigue, and concepts of loyalty with intelligence and intensity you simply won't find anywhere in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. If there's one glaring side effect of the current surfeit of Marvel films now out in an increasingly superhero-overwhelmed world. Although to be fair, Black Widow is the first release in the MCU since July 2019. Spider-Man, Far From Home. It's that everything is starting to merge together into one action-filled, super high-octane blurb. In and of itself, that's not a problem. Since if there is one thing that sells to Marvel's core fan base, it's that there are lots of spectacular action sequences and they are ever louder, longer, and more visually intense. That they also usually stick to relatively the same formula is also part of the formula for many people. And this is fair enough in one sense, since what you sometimes want when you go to the cinema is big, dumb, diverting blockbuster fun in a Black Widow. However, set after the highly disruptive events of Fat Captain America Civil War, although the final credits scene is set following Avengers: A Game. Thanks to Avaltaraya for that piece of chronological clarification. While we get the usual explosions and hard-fought battles, and good versus evil confrontations, we also get a great deal emotional resonance than is usual in an MCU entry. It's not that the MCU films are devoid of emotional impact. You would have to have a hard heart indeed not to have felt all the feelings at the end of Faye Avengers Infinity War, or have had your heart pulled out of your chest as the curtain fell on the startling events of Faye Avengers Endgame. But by and large, Marvel movies' chief stock in trade has not been a deep dive into muscular, substantial, emotional-filled storytelling. That all changes with the Black Widow, which takes audiences back, way back, in fact, to the very start of Natasha Romanoff's Scarlett Johansson life, which is, as you might expect from someone with drama swimming in her anguished ties, was not an altogether happy one. Quite why it was happy is something that has to be left to the Revelations-heavy narrative. But suffice to say, the orphan of Marvel Laura finally gets Eret Kanad from Leah, only to have it. While specifics are too spoiler-laden to be of any value here, Natasha's family redefines the idea of complicated, a construct that seems happy but which a great deal of pain underlying it, especially when events conspire to pull it part one brutal, infinitely painful night. Just over 2 decades later, and Natasha has clawed her way out of the cess of misery that was much of her life. Having found a home and family with her fellow superheroes AO at the time of Fab Black Widow, there's less domestic bliss and more violent fury, much to Natasha's regret. But you never ever really leave family, even her strange mess of one behind. And so when her younger sister, Elena Bova Florence Pugh, pops up suddenly needing her help, she leaps right in, though not without some serious misgivings. You can understand her reluctance after a lifetime spent escaping her past. Natasha has not wished to go diving straight back into it, but with General Drykov, Ray Winterstone, the Russian mastermind who made Natasha and Yelena's lives held during the years of harsh militaristic training at the Red Room, where they became fearsomely good, highly controlled killers back on the scene. And with the means provided by Yelena to bring him down in hand, Natasha really has no choice but to take a stand. The stains of the past be damned. Black Widow, which also sees her, reunited with her father, Alexei Shastakov, Red Guardian, David Harbour, who was a pleasing study in comedic narcissism and earnestness, and her mother, Molina Vostokov, Black Widow, Rachel Weisz, who is part of the same program as her brutalized daughters, thus carries a considerable amount of emotional behind it, delving deep into the great pain that defines Natasha and her strange, twisted, but broken family. While all this may sound deadly serious and emotionally intense, and it is, there's also a great deal of levity to be had too. Florence Pugh is a notable standout in this regard, delivering her feisty, comedically laced lines with the hood, but that is refreshing and a marked contrast to her far more intense older sister. At one point, the two sisters are driving furiously fast through the streets of Budapest, pursued by still brainwashed fellow Black Widows and a scarily tall, relentless helmeted figure known as the Taskmaster, which ends up with Yelena sustaining some fairly bloody if survivable injuries. As Natasha defends her plan on the run, Yelena quickly responds with, "Yeah, it's a great plan." I love the part where I almost bled to death during the same piece of traffic ducking and diving. Yelena steals a commuter's car off him. And after Natasha admonishes her for doing so, Yelena, without missing a beat, says, "What? You want me to chase after him and unsteal it?" And so it goes on and on. Pugh delivering killer line after hilariously killer line, but also proving herself more than capable of playing off actingly seen, stealingly vulnerable too. You could well argue that Pugh steals the film off Johansson at more than one point. And given that A Black Widow is the first film in Marvel's Phase 4 slate, that makes sense, especially given the electric final credit scene. But really, the two actors stand toe-to-toe beautifully, each playing masterfully off the other and giving the film a hugely rich, emotional heart that lifts it well beyond its frequent action jam scenes. Black Widow may not be the finest Marvel film out there, but it is a fine piece of deeply emotive filmmaking that dares to spend a significant amount of its running time taking a deep dive into the backstory of one of its hitherto main characters, and by so doing cleverly setting up the next run of MCU films. And some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.